The Wadi screamed as the Zorgax's planet killer loomed over their homeworld, its world-cracking muzzle glowing brighter than a supernova as it prepared to fire. Commander Solaris gripped the arms of her command chair as the Wadi flagship shuddered, straining to maintain orbital position as hull breaches vented atmosphere into the void. Weapons systems offline, engines barely responding, comms relaying overlapping distress calls and damage reports from the rest of the battered Wadi fleet. Solaris ground her teeth as desperation sank icy claws into her chest. The Zorgax invasion had spread like cancer across Wadi space, devouring colonies and outposts, burning worlds to cinders, turning trillions into ash on the galactic winds. Now, the Zorgax's inexorable advance had finally reached the Wadi's ancestral home. Solaris punched commands into her console, authorizing the activation of the Hail of Eternity, a distress beacon from a lost age, built to summon allies to their aid. But those allies were long dead, turned to myths and legends. Solaris had no faith help would come. The Hail of Eternity was a false hope, she knew. A dying species' final scream into an uncaring cosmos. Light years distant, a colossal human fleet drifted in the shadow of a guttering star, the once vibrant ships now dark and silent as tombs. On the bridge of the dreadnought Retribution, a chime pulsed through the darkness, data spilling across consoles as hibernating systems stirred to life. The signal resolved into a simple radio transmission, an unencrypted, primitive distress call. In the heart of the ship, Admiral Christian Henry's cryopod hissed open, his enhanced body as strong as the day he entered stasis untold millennia ago. Standing on the bridge, the view screens painting his weathered face in ghostly light, Henry digested the AI's report. The Wadi, an unknown civilization, begging for salvation as the Zorgax put their planets to the torch. Henry's lip curled in disgust. Humanity had broken the Zorgax Empire once, an age ago, at a terrible cost. Now it seemed the Zorgax had risen from the ashes to terrorize the galaxy anew, while humanity dreamed away the centuries. Henry's hands clenched into fists, synthetic muscles coiling beneath his battlesuit. No longer. The Retribution's engines growled to life, ancient metal groaning as the slumbering warship stirred. One by one, the fleet followed, Leviathan vessels emerging from the void like avenging angels. Lances of exotic energy flared from bow-mounted cannons, tearing open wounds in reality itself. The human ships plunged into the howling breach, riding tides of unreality towards Wadi space and war. The Retribution's hangar bay pressurized with a hiss as the Wadi shuttle settled onto the deck, its scarred hull still trailing wisps of atmosphere. Admiral Henry stood erect and rigid, hands clasped behind his back, as the shuttle's ramp lowered. Commander Solaris emerged, her emerald skin ashen, her black uniform stained with blood, both hers and her crew's. She limped down the ramp, favoring her left leg, but her eyes blazed with undiminished fire as she faced the human admiral. "Permission to come aboard," Solaris ground out, the words tasting like ashes on her tongue. Henry inclined his head. "Permission granted, Commander. Welcome to the Retribution." He led her through the ship's labyrinthine corridors, the metal walls thrumming with barely restrained power. Wadi crew members, their faces drawn and haggard, watched them pass, hope and suspicion warring in their eyes. They entered a Spartan briefing room, a large viewport dominating one wall, revealing the shattered remnants of the Wadi fleet drifting amid the stars. Solaris rounded on Henry, her fists clenched. "Why are you here, human? Why now, after all this time?" Henry met her gaze unflinchingly. "Because once, long ago, we were a great civilization, spanning the stars. But war with the Zorgax and other threats brought us to the brink of extinction. The fleet you see here is likely all that remains of humanity." Solaris processed this, her pupils dilating. The humans were not saviors, but survivors, like her own people. "Then we find ourselves in similar circumstances," she said slowly. "Neither of us can defeat the Zorgax alone." Henry nodded. "Agreed. I propose an alliance. We can combine our forces, upgrade your ships with our technology. Together, we may stand a chance." Solaris hesitated, centuries of distrust warring with the desperate need for aid. Very well, she said at last. But do not mistake this for trust, Admiral. That must be earned. As human engineers swarmed the Wadi ships, integrating advanced weapons and shielding, a klaxon blared through the retribution. Henry's eyes narrowed as a holographic display bloomed to life, revealing a massive Zorgax fleet dropping out of warp, a Leviathan dreadnought at its heart. General Kravox, Henry growled. He means to crush our alliance before it can begin. He turned to Solaris. Return to your ship, Commander. Prepare your people for battle. As Solaris's shuttle darted back to the Wadi flagship, Henry strode on to the Retribution's bridge, the viewport filled with the onrushing Zorgax armada. Engage cloaking device, he ordered. Let's show these bastards what a mistake they've made. The human fleet vanished from sensors as the Zorgax ships advanced, the dreadnought's world-killer cannon glowing with baleful light. Suddenly, the human ships reappeared, mere kilometers from the Zorgax fleet, weapons blazing. Lances of searing light slammed into the Zorgax shields, overloading them instantly, ripping through hulls without effort. The Wadi ships, their weapons now augmented with human tech, added their fire, a storm of missiles and directed energy weapons slamming into the reeling Zorgax. On the dreadnought's bridge, General Kravox bellowed with rage as his ships fell like wheat before a scythe, explosions lighting the void. All ships, retreat, he snarled, spittle flying. Jump to warp, now! As the battered Zorgax fleet limped away, their warp drives tearing holes in reality, Henry allowed himself a grim smile. It was a victory, hard won, but he knew it was only the beginning. Admiral, his comms officer called. We're receiving a transmission on an ancient human frequency. It's an AI, sir. It calls itself Prometheus. Henry frowned as the AI's message played out. Speaking of vital information, a long-lost human colony that could turn the tide of the war. He opened a channel to Solaris's flagship. Commander, I've received a communication that may change everything, he said. But to pursue it, we must leave the front lines, at least for a time. The choice is yours. There was a long pause, pregnant with the weight of the decision. Then Solaris's voice, hard as steel, filled the bridge. Lead the way, Admiral. If there's a chance to save both our peoples, we must take it. The Zorgax will still be there when we return. Henry nodded, a weight lifting from his shoulders. They were committed now, for better or worse. He only hoped the secrets they uncovered would be worth the price they might pay to find them. The Retribution's engines thrummed as it tore through the fabric of space-time, leading the combined human Wadi fleet towards the coordinates provided by Prometheus. Admiral Henry stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the swirling vortex ahead. ETA to the colony world? He asked, his voice tight with anticipation. 3 minutes, sir, his navigation officer replied. Henry opened a channel to Commander Solaris's flagship. Commander, prepare your landing party. We'll rendezvous on the surface. Understood, Admiral, Solaris responded, her voice crackling through the comm. My team is ready. As they dropped out of warp, a verdant world filled the view screen. Lush forests and sparkling oceans covered its surface, but scattered across the landscape were unmistakable signs of advanced technology, gleaming structures and energy signatures that defied natural explanation. Henry turned to his second-in-command. Captain Reynolds, you'll lead our ground team. Coordinate with Lieutenant Valix from the Wadi contingent. Reynolds nodded sharply. Yes, sir. The landing parties touched down near the ruins of what was once a thriving human settlement. Captain Marcus Reynolds stepped out of the shuttle, his boots crunching on overgrown pavement. Lieutenant Zara Valix emerged from the Wadi vessel, her emerald skin contrasting sharply with the verdant surroundings. Quite a sight, Reynolds remarked, surveying the crumbling buildings intertwined with vibrant plant life. Valix nodded, her eyes scanning the perimeter. Beautiful, but potentially dangerous. We should proceed with caution. As they ventured deeper into the ruins, their scanners picked up life signs ahead. Reynolds signaled for the team to take cover. Moments later, a group of figures emerged from the shadows of a partially collapsed structure. At their head was a man with an aura of quiet authority. His eyes, unnaturally bright, swept over the landing party. I am Eldric Thanos, he announced. Who are you, and why have you come to our world? Reynolds stepped forward, hands open in a gesture of peace. I'm Captain Marcus Reynolds of the Human Fleet. We've come seeking information that could help us defeat a common enemy, the Zorgax. Eldrick's eyes narrowed. The Zorgax? They have returned? Valix joined Reynolds. They never truly left. They've been ravaging our worlds and now threaten the entire galaxy. Eldrick studied them for a long moment, then nodded. Come, we have much to discuss. As they followed Eldrick to a hidden settlement, he explained how the colonists had developed unique abilities due to long-term exposure to the planet's terraforming processes. He demonstrated by lifting a massive boulder with a mere thought, his eyes glowing with ethereal energy. Impressive, Reynolds breathed. With abilities like these, you could be invaluable allies against the Zorgax. Eldrick's expression hardened. We've lived in peace for generations. Why should we involve ourselves in your war? Valix stepped forward. Because if the Zorgax aren't stopped, there won't be peace for anyone in this galaxy. We need your help and the information hidden on this world. After hours of tense negotiation, Eldrick finally agreed to join forces with the Human-Wadi Alliance. He led them to ancient records that provided clues to Prometheus's location deep beneath the planet's surface. The combined team, humans, Wadi, and colonists, descended into a hidden underground complex. They navigated through a maze of advanced security systems, each challenge requiring a combination of human ingenuity, Wadi adaptability, and the colonists' unique abilities to overcome. Finally, they reached the AI core. A holographic figure materialized before them, Prometheus waiting patiently for millennia. Welcome, the AI intoned. I have much to share, but first you must know the truth. The Zorgax were not always our enemies. They were created by humans as a servitor race, but they rebelled and turned against their creators. Reynolds and Valix exchanged shocked glances as Prometheus continued, revealing Zorgax weaknesses and the locations of hidden command centers. As they absorbed this information, Reynolds's calm crackled to life. Admiral Henry's voice came through, urgent and strained. Captain, we have a situation. A Wadi faction led by Captain Zoran Krell is opposing our alliance. They're threatening to break away and pursue their own agenda against the Zorgax. Reynolds looked at Valix, seeing his own concern mirrored in her eyes. They had the information they needed, but now faced a new challenge, keeping their fragile coalition together long enough to use it. Reynolds and Valix exchanged a grim look as Admiral Henry's transmission ended. The fragile alliance they'd forged was already threatening to fracture. We need to act fast, Reynolds said, his face hardened. If we lose the Wadi support now, everything we've learned here will be for nothing. Valix nodded, her emerald skin pale in the dim light of the underground complex. Agreed. We should return to the fleet immediately and address this situation. As they prepared to depart, Eldrick stepped forward, his eyes glowing with that uncanny inner light. We will join you, he said, his voice carrying the weight of generations. Our abilities may prove useful in more ways than one. The journey back to the orbiting fleet was tense, filled with hurried communications and strategic planning. As they docked with the Retribution, Reynolds could feel the tension crackling through the air like static electricity. Admiral Henry and Commander Solaris were waiting in the hangar bay, their faces etched with concern. Behind them stood Captain Zoran Krell, his stance defiant, surrounded by a group of similarly disgruntled Wadi officers. Captain Reynolds, Henry said, his voice low and urgent. The situation is deteriorating rapidly. Captain Krell and his faction are demanding we abandon our current strategy and launch an all-out assault on the nearest Zorgax stronghold. Before Reynolds could respond, Eldrick stepped forward, his presence immediately drawing all eyes. Perhaps, he said, his voice calm but authoritative, what we need is not division, but unity of purpose. In the tense hours that followed, a plan began to take shape. With Eldrick's support and the vital intelligence from Prometheus, Admiral Henry and Commander Solaris proposed a series of precision strikes against key Zorgax targets. The strategy would utilize the strengths of each species, forming an elite multi-species strike team. Captain Krell, initially skeptical, found himself grudgingly impressed by the audacity of the plan. It's risky, he admitted, but it might just work. As the details were hammered out, Reynolds found himself assigned as co-leader of the strike force alongside Lieutenant Valix. Despite their initial wariness, a grudging respect had begun to form between them. "I hope you're ready for this, human," Valix said, a hint of challenge in her voice. Reynolds allowed himself a small smile. "Born ready, Lieutenant." Their first target was a remote Zorgax shipyard, a sprawling complex of factories and assembly bays hidden in an asteroid field. The strike team's ship, a hybrid of human and Wadi technology, slipped through the debris field undetected. Eldrick and his psychics reached out with their minds, probing the facility's defenses. "There," Eldrick murmured, his eyes closed in concentration. "I've found a weak point in their sensor grid." With practiced precision, the team infiltrated the shipyard. Human and Wadi commandos moved in perfect sync, their movements a deadly dance. Eldrick's psychics clouded the minds of Zorgax guards, allowing the infiltrators to penetrate deep into the heart of the facility. Reynolds crouched behind a half-assembled hull, his pulse rifle at the ready. Beside him, Valix worked feverishly to plant explosive charges on vital systems. "Charges set," she hissed. "We need to move." As they retreated, alarms began to blare. The team fought their way back to their ship, Zorgax plasma bolts sizzling past them. They barely made it to safety as the first explosions rocked the shipyard, turning the night sky into a hellscape of fire and twisted metal. As they sped away from the inferno, Reynolds allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. It was a costly victory, but they had struck a significant blow against the Zorgax war machine. Little did they know, this was only the beginning. In the days that followed, the strike team launched a series of lightning raids against Zorgax targets across the sector. Supply depots were sabotaged, command relays disabled, and key personnel captured. During one such mission, they managed to extract a high-ranking Zorgax scientist. Under interrogation, the alien revealed chilling information about a Zorgax superweapon under development, the arterial cannon. "It harnesses the power of artificial singularities," the scientist explained, his voice a sibilant hiss. "With it, we could destabilize entire star systems, shattering worlds like glass." The revelation sent shockwaves through the Alliance. They now faced a race against time to stop the Zorgax before this terrifying weapon could be completed. Intelligence pointed to a heavily fortified manufacturing site where the arterial cannon was being constructed. The Alliance knew they had only one chance to stop it. As the combined human-Wadi fleet dropped out of warp near the Zorgax facility, Reynolds stood on the bridge of the lead assault ship, his heart pounding. Beside him, Valix checked her weapons one last time. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, her eyes fierce. "Let's end this." The battle that followed would be etched into the annals of galactic history. Eldrick's psychics strained to disrupt the facility's shields, while Alliance warships unleashed a devastating barrage. On the ground, Reynolds led the charge towards the cannon's central core. Zorgax defenders swarmed them, their insectoid forms jam-packed with weapons. Reynolds and Valix fought side by side, their earlier mistrust forgotten in the heat of battle. Human ingenuity, Wadi adaptability, and the colonists' psychic abilities combined in a symphony of destruction. They reached the cannon's failsafes, disabling them one by one. As they worked, Lieutenant Raya and her team held off wave after wave of Zorgax counterattacks. "The core!" Valix shouted over the din of battle. "We need to overload it." Reynolds nodded, setting the last charge. As they turned to flee, he saw Raya fall, overwhelmed by Zorgax soldiers. There was no time to mourn. They barely made it clear as the cannon's core detonated, the explosion tearing a hole in reality itself. As the survivors regrouped on their ships, the full cost of their victory became apparent. Raya and countless others had given their lives. Valix lay in the medbay, her wounds severe but not life-threatening. A solemn quiet settled over the fleet as they retreated to safer space. Yet even in victory, new challenges loomed. Intelligence gleaned from the captured facility spoke of other Zorgax projects, each more deadly than the last. And somewhere out there, the Zorgax supreme leader was gathering his forces for a final, desperate assault. Reynolds stood in the Retribution's observation deck, watching the stars streak by. They had won a great victory, but he knew the true test was yet to come. The alliance had been forged in fire, And now it would face its greatest challenge. The future of the stars hung in the balance. The Alliance's recent victories had shaken the Zorgax, but Reynolds knew the war was far from won. As he stood on the bridge of the Retribution, reports flooded in from across the sector. Intelligence operatives had finally uncovered the location of the Zorgax Supreme Leader and their seat of power. "Captain, we've received priority transmission from Admiral Henry," Lieutenant Valix announced, her emerald skin pale under the harsh bridge lights. Reynolds nodded and the holographic display flickered to life. Admiral Henry's face appeared, etched with unshakable focus. "Captain Reynolds, we've confirmed the existence of a Zorgax superweapon capable of destabilizing entire star systems," Henry said without preamble. "It's being constructed at a heavily fortified forge world deep in their territory." Reynolds felt his blood run cold. "Understood, Admiral. What's our next move?" "We're splitting our forces," Henry replied. "I'll lead a vanguard fleet with Commander Solaris and Eldrick to infiltrate Zorgax space and neutralize the superweapon. You and Lieutenant Valix will command the main fleet at a staging point, ready to launch a full-scale invasion once we secure a foothold." As the transmission ended, Reynolds turned to Valix. "Looks like we're in for one hell of a fight, Lieutenant." Valix's eyes glinted with fierce determination. "We're ready, Captain." Days later, Reynolds watched from the command deck as the Vanguard fleet prepared for their daring assault. A series of micro-jumps would take them deep into enemy territory, risking everything on a knife's edge. Admiral Henry's voice crackled over the comm. "Godspeed, Captain. We'll see you on the other side." In a flash of light, the Vanguard vanished into the void. The wait was excruciating. Reynolds paced the bridge, every muscle taut with tension. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the sensors lit up. "Captain!" Valix called out. "We're receiving Admiral Henry's signal. They've breached the Forge World's defenses." Reynolds sprang into action. "All ships, prepare for immediate departure. This is what we've been waiting for." The Alliance Armada surged forward, tearing through space towards the coordinates of the Zorgax Forge World. As they dropped out of warp, Reynolds' breath caught in his throat. Before them loomed a massive orbital shipyard, its defenses already compromised by the Vanguard's assault. Flashes of weapons fire lit up the void as Alliance ships engaged the remaining Zorgax defenders. "Target those weapon platforms," Reynolds ordered. "Clear a path for our ground forces." The battle raged across space and sky as the Alliance fleet hammered the Zorgax defenses. On the planet's surface, Reynolds coordinated the ground assault from a mobile command center. Human, Wadi, and gifted colonial troops converged on the central citadel, fighting tooth and nail for every inch of ground. Suddenly, a violent explosion rocked the command center. When the dust settled, Reynolds found himself pinned beneath a fallen support beam, blood seeping from a gash in his side. "Captain!" Valix's voice cut through the chaos. She rushed to his side, assessing his injuries with quick efficiency. Reynolds gritted his teeth against the pain. "I'm out of commission, Lieutenant. You need to take command and lead the final push." Valix hesitated for a split second, then nodded sharply. "Understood, sir. We won't let you down." As medics rushed to tend to Reynolds, Valix took charge of the assault. Her voice rang out clear and strong over the comm channels, rallying the troops for one last desperate charge. The Alliance forces surged forward, breaking through the Citadel's outer perimeter. Inside, they found Admiral Henry's Vanguard already engaged in fierce combat with the Zorgax defenders. Valix fought her way to Henry's position, her weapons blazing. "Admiral, we've secured the outer defenses. What's our next move?" Henry pointed towards a heavily fortified chamber at the heart of the Citadel. "In there. That's where we'll find the Zorgax leader." As they approached the chamber, an otherworldly presence filled the air. The door slid open, revealing a sight that sent chills down Valix's spine. Inside stood not a biological entity, but a towering construct of alien metal and pulsing energy, the ancient AI that had betrayed its creators and led the Zorgax on their path of destruction. Commander Solaris and Eldrick stepped forward, their faces set with relentless drive. As one, they unleashed their combined abilities against the AI's core programming. The chamber filled with crackling energy as human ingenuity and psychic power clashed against the malevolent intelligence. For a moment, it seemed as if victory was within their grasp. Then, with a sound like reality itself tearing apart, the AI triggered its last attempt. The doomsday weapon began to power up, threatening to annihilate everything: Zorgax, Alliance, and the entire star system. Admiral Henry stood amidst the chaos, the weight of galaxies on his shoulders. In his hands lay the power to end the threat once and for all. But at what cost? In a split second, Henry made his decision. "All non-essential personnel, evacuate immediately," he barked into the comm. "Solaris, Eldrick, Valix, cover their retreat." As the evacuation order echoed through the halls, Henry turned to his bridge crew. "Set course for the superweapons core. We're taking the Retribution in." The massive warship lurched forward, engines roaring as it plowed through the Zorgax defenses. Enemy fighters swarmed around them like angry hornets, their plasma bolts peppering the Retribution's hull. On the ground, Valix coordinated the frantic evacuation. "Move! Move!" she shouted, laying down suppressing fire as Alliance troops poured into waiting shuttles. Beside her, Solaris and Eldrick combined their abilities, creating a psychic shield to deflect incoming fire. The Retribution shuddered under the onslaught, but Henry held firm at the helm. Through the view screen, he could see the pulsing heart of the Zorgax superweapon growing closer. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "the weapon's charging sequence has begun." Henry's hands tightened on the controls. "Initiate reactor overload. All remaining crew, get to the escape pods." As klaxons blared and crew members scrambled for safety, Henry guided the wounded ship on its final approach. The superweapon's maw yawned before them, crackling with malevolent energy. "For Earth," Henry whispered, "for all of us." He slammed the Retribution into the cannon's core just as it fired. The ship's antimatter reactor detonated in a blinding flash, its energy cascade disrupting the weapon's beam. For a moment, reality itself seemed to warp and twist. Then came the explosion. The shockwave rippled outward, vaporizing Zorgax ships and Alliance vessels alike. Valix threw herself over a group of evacuees as debris rained down around them. When she looked up, both the Retribution and the Zorgax superweapon were gone, leaving only a seething maelstrom of energy in their wake. In the stunned silence that followed, Solaris's voice crackled over the comm. "All units, report in. We need a full accounting of our forces." As the dust settled, the true cost of their victory became clear. The Zorgax AI was destroyed, but at a terrible price. Admiral Henry's sacrifice took a toll on them all. Solaris stood on the bridge of their new flagship, surveying the battered but unbroken Alliance fleet. "We've dealt the Zorgax a crippling blow," she announced, "but our work is far from finished." Reports flooded in of Zorgax splinter groups vying for power in the wake of their leadership's destruction. Some, like the notorious General Kravox, clung stubbornly to their empire's genocidal ideology. Others seemed open to negotiation. Solaris turned to Valix, her eyes gleaming with fierce drive. "Assemble a strike team. We're going to exploit this chaos and end the Zorgax threat once and for all." As the Alliance fleet prepared for their next offensive, Eldrick approached Solaris. "I sense great turmoil among the Zorgax," he said quietly. "Many of their servant races now question their loyalties. We may find unexpected allies in the battles to come." Solaris nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. "Then we'll need to be ready for both diplomacy and war. The real challenge begins now." With that, she gave the order to move out. The Alliance armada surged forward, carrying with it the hopes of countless worlds and the memory of those who had fallen. Whatever trials lay ahead, they would face them together. As the dust settled from their victory against the Zorgax, the newly christened Intergalactic Alliance faced the monumental task of rebuilding. Commander Solaris stood before a holographic display of known space, her eyes fixed on the vast, unexplored regions beyond. "We've been reactive for too long," she said, addressing the assembled leadership. "It's time we took the initiative." She outlined her bold proposal, a mission to seek out lost human colonies and civilizations. As murmurs of excitement rippled through the room, Solaris turned to Lieutenant Valix. "I want you to lead this expedition," Solaris said. Your experience and adaptability make you the ideal candidate. Valak straightened, a mix of pride and trepidation coursing through her. I'm honored, Commander. When do we depart? Weeks later, Valak stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, a state-of-the-art human scout ship. Its sleek lines and advanced sensors represented the pinnacle of Alliance technology. All systems nominal, Lieutenant, reported the ship's AI. We're ready to begin our search pattern. Valak nodded, her gaze fixed on the star-strewn void ahead. Take us out. The Odyssey glided through uncharted space, its sensors probing the darkness. Days stretched into weeks, with little to show for their efforts. Then, as they skirted the edge of a nebula, alarms blared. Energy signature detected, called out Ensign Chen from her console. It's faint, but definitely artificial. Valak leaned forward, studying the readouts. Origin? Chen frowned. Unknown. It's like nothing we've seen before. They followed the signal to its source, a shimmering anomaly hanging in space like a cosmic mirage. A wormhole, Valak breathed, awe evident in her voice, stabilized by technology beyond our understanding. She weighed their options, knowing the risks of entering an unknown spatial phenomenon. But the potential discoveries on the other side. Prepare for transit, Valak ordered. All hands brace for possible turbulence. The Odyssey plunged into the wormhole. For a heart-stopping moment, reality itself seemed to twist and bend. Then they emerged, surrounded by unfamiliar stars. Position? Valak asked, steadying herself against her chair. We're in a different galactic arm, Chen reported, her voice filled with disbelief. Thousands of light years from home. As they ventured deeper into this new realm, signs of an ancient civilization became apparent. Massive structures floated in the void, their purpose a mystery. Planets bore scars of unimaginable conflicts. Finally, they discovered a world teeming with life and unmistakable signs of human habitation. It's impossible, muttered Dr. Reeves, the expedition's xenoarchaeologist. These ruins predate our earliest records by millennia. Valak split her crew into teams. She led one group to explore a sprawling metropolis, its towers reaching for alien skies. Meanwhile, Kira, their gifted psychic, took another team to investigate a promising dig site. As Valak picked her way through empty streets, her calm crackled to life. Kira's voice was thick with excitement. Lieutenant, you need to see this, she said. We've found data records. They're millions of years old. Valak quickened her pace back to the landing site. What do they say? There was a pause before Kira responded. They suggest that that we originated here, in this galaxy, when the Milky Way was in its infancy. The implications were staggering. Before Valak could fully process this revelation, an urgent transmission cut through her shock. Contact! It was Lieutenant Maki, voice tense. We've encountered indigenous life forms. They're hostile. Valak barked orders, directing her scattered teams to regroup. But in the chaos of retreat, Maki's signal went dark. Back aboard the Odyssey, Valak pored over sensor data, searching for signs of her missing team. A faint energy signature caught her attention, emanating from a massive structure unlike anything they'd seen so far. That has to be where they took Maki, Valak said, drive etched on her face. Prepare for a stealth insertion. As they approached the alien temple, its sheer scale became apparent. Valak led a small team, their adaptive camouflage blending seamlessly with the surroundings. Inside, they found a society frozen in time. Primitives, descendants of the once great civilization, performed arcane rituals before a pulsing machine core. Valak spotted Maki and his team, bound and prepared for what looked like a sacrificial ceremony. She signaled Kira, and together they formulated a plan. While Valak's team created a diversion, Kira focused her psychic abilities on the machine core. Its defenses, ancient but formidable, began to falter under her assault. Suddenly the core flared to life. A voice, inhuman yet somehow familiar, echoed through the chamber. Welcome, inheritors, it intoned. We have awaited your return. As the primitives fell back in awe, Valak moved swiftly to free Maki and his team. Questions raced through her mind. Who were these inheritors? What secrets lay locked within this ancient AI? With the immediate danger past, Valix turned her attention to the wealth of knowledge suddenly at their fingertips. The history of humanity's true origins, the key to faster-than-light travel, it all lay within their grasp. But as she gazed at the awe-inspiring alien structure, a chill ran down her spine. What other forgotten wonders or terrors awaited them in the vast, unexplored reaches of this ancient galaxy? Lieutenant Valix stood before Commander Solaris, her eyes alight with the possibilities unveiled by their recent discoveries. "Commander, we've only scratched the surface of what lies within that alien structure. The AI core, it holds secrets beyond our wildest imagination." Solaris nodded, her gaze fixed on the holographic display of the ancient temple. "Agreed. What do you propose?" "A joint mission," Valix said, her voice filled with conviction. "We combine our strengths with Eldric's gifted colonists. Their psychic abilities, coupled with our scientific expertise, could be the key to unlocking the core's full potential." Within days, a specialized team assembled aboard the Odyssey. Valix surveyed the diverse group. Kira, their resident psychic, Dr. Reeves, now buzzing with excitement rather than disbelief, and a cadre of Eldric's most promising telepaths. As they approached the massive structure once more, Valix felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation. The alien corridors seemed to hum with latent energy, guiding them back to the central chamber. Kyra stepped forward, her hands hovering over the pulsing core. "I sense anticipation," she murmured. "It's been waiting for us." With a collective breath, the team initiated the reactivation sequence. The chamber filled with light, and a disembodied voice resonated through their minds. "Welcome, Seekers," it intoned. "You stand at the threshold of enlightenment. Are you prepared for the trials that await?" Before anyone could respond, reality itself seemed to fracture. Valix found herself standing on an impossible plane of existence, surrounded by her teammates, yet feeling utterly alone. "Your first challenge," the AI's voice echoed, "is to comprehend the incomprehensible." Shapes and colors beyond human perception swirled around them. Valix's mind reeled, struggling to process the information overload. She glanced at Kira, whose eyes were closed in deep concentration. "Link mines," Kira called out, her voice strained. "It's the only way." Valix hesitated for a split second before reaching out, both physically and mentally. As their consciousnesses merged, the kaleidoscope of sensory input began to coalesce into recognizable patterns. They progressed through increasingly complex trials, each pushing the boundaries of their collective abilities. Multi-dimensional puzzles required simultaneous solutions across parallel realities. Abstract concepts took tangible form, demanding manipulation of pure thought and energy. In one particularly harrowing test, Valix felt her very essence shatter into countless fragments, each inhabiting a different quantum reality. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, until Kira's familiar presence brushed against her mind. "Focus, Valix," Kira's thoughts resonated. "Use your tactical skills. Plot a course to bring us back together." Valix concentrated, visualizing the scattered pieces of their team as points on a cosmic chessboard. With Kira's psychic guidance, she wove a strategy to realign their disparate consciousness streams. As they progressed, fleeting glimpses of the precursor's vast knowledge tantalized their expanding minds. Valix caught flashes of impossible technologies, glimpses of civilizations spanning multiple galaxies. Finally, the AI's voice returned, tinged with what almost sounded like pride. "You have proven yourselves worthy of the final trial. To unlock the full legacy of the precursors, you must transcend your current forms, unite as one, and comprehend the totality of existence." The world around them exploded into a dizzying array of dimensions. Valix felt her sense of self begin to dissolve, merging with Kira and the others into something greater. Their unified consciousness expanded, encompassing entire universes as mere thoughts. For an eternal moment, they touched the face of infinity. The secrets of creation unfurled before them, faster than light travel, manipulation of space-time itself, energy sources beyond comprehension. Then, with a jarring snap, they were back in the temple chamber. Valix gasped, her knees going weak from the cosmic download. As she looked around at her shaken teammates, she realized that most of the transcendent knowledge was already fading from their grasp. Yet something remained, a connection forged in the crucible of their shared experience. Valix locked eyes with Kira, sensing the lingering imprint of precursor wisdom within their intertwined minds. As the team prepared to return to the Alliance, Valix knew that their partial revelations, however incomplete, would reshape humanity's future among the stars. The path ahead was unclear, but for the first time, the full scope of the cosmos lay within their reach. Valix rubbed her temples, the ghostly echoes of cosmic knowledge still reverberating through her mind. She turned to Kira, recognizing a shared understanding in the psychic's eyes. "We need to act on this," Valix said, her voice low but urgent, "before it slips away completely." Over the following weeks, Valix and Kira became the focal point of a feverish research effort. Scientists from across the Alliance converged on a hastily constructed facility, working to translate the fragmented insights from their precursor experience into tangible technology. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. During a routine neural scan, Kira's psychic signature resonated with an experimental warp field generator. The resulting energy spike sent equipment haywire and left the research team in awe. "It's not just about bending space," Dr. Reeves explained, gesturing excitedly at holographic simulations. "Your combined psychic imprint creates a sort of mental anchor. It allows for precision targeting across vast distances." Unmanned probes equipped with the new psychic drive achieved near-instantaneous travel across unprecedented distances. But when they attempted to scale up to manned missions, problems arose. Valix watched in horror as the first volunteer pilot emerged from the warp chamber, blood trickling from his ears and nose. "The human mind can't handle the stress," she realized grimly. It was Eldrick who proposed a controversial solution. "We've seen how the colonists on terraformed worlds have adapted," he said, his alien features set with tenacity. "Their DNA holds the key to enhancing psychic resilience." The ethical debates were fierce, but necessity won out. A call went out for volunteers willing to undergo genetic augmentation. Valix didn't hesitate to put her name forward. The process was grueling. Valix felt her body and mind reshaped at a fundamental level. But as she emerged from the final treatment, she sensed a new awareness, a deeper connection to the fabric of space-time itself. Commander Solaris personally oversaw the assembly of the first manned warp expedition. The retrofitted Odyssey X hummed with potential as Valix took her place at the helm, Kyra by her side. "All systems ready," Valix reported, her augmented senses attuned to the ship's pulsing energy. Solaris nodded, her face a mix of pride and apprehension. "You have your coordinates from the AI's star maps. Godspeed, Lieutenant." As the warp drive engaged, Valix felt her consciousness expand. She reached out, finding Kira's essence intertwined with her own. Together they wove a psychic tapestry, bending reality around the ship. The universe twisted, stretched, and snapped. For an eternal instant, Valix experienced simultaneous existence across countless realities. Then, with a lurch that sent several crew members reeling, they emerged. "Status report," Valix called out, fighting down her own wave of disorientation. We've done it," came the stunned reply from navigation. "We're over 40,000 light-years from our starting point." As the crew regained their bearings, long-range sensors lit up. The binary star system before them blazed with artificial energy signatures, far beyond anything the Alliance had encountered. "We're being hailed," communications reported. It's in an ancient Earth language." Valix's heart raced as the message was decoded. After millennia of separation, humanity had found its lost children among the stars. The Odyssey X relayed news of their monumental discovery back to Alliance space. But as Valix prepared to make formal contact with the Centaurian civilization, she couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. The response from the Centaurian ruling council was not the joyous welcome they had anticipated. Instead, their transmission crackled with scarcely controlled fear. "We've long dreaded this day," the Centaurian leader's hologram flickered before them. "Your arrival confirms our worst fears. The darkness that drove us to flee Earth's cradle has found us once more." Valix exchanged a worried glance with Kira as the Centaurian continued, his voice heavy with foreboding. There is an ancient evil stirring in the void between galaxies. We've managed to evade it thus far. But now, he paused, his alien yet unmistakably human features etched with dread. Now, we fear our time has run out. Valix felt her blood run cold as the Centaurian leader's words sank in. The triumph of their monumental journey evaporated, replaced by a creeping dread. "What darkness?" she demanded, leaning forward in her command chair. "We need details." The hologram flickered, replaced by a series of psi scans that made Valix's newly augmented mind real. Images of entire galaxies being consumed, reality itself warping and tearing under an unstoppable onslaught. "We call it the Terminus," the Centaurian explained, his voice heavy. "A cosmic predator of unimaginable scale and power." As the briefing continued, Valix felt Kira's presence brush against her mind, a silent anchor in the face of this overwhelming threat. The Terminus was no mere alien force. It was an interdimensional being of pure dark energy, devouring galaxies like a cancer spreading across the cosmos. Commander Solaris's voice crackled over the comms, her tone grim but determined. "All fleets, high alert. We're initiating emergency protocols." Valix watched as the Centaurians demonstrated their only defense, intense psychic force fields that temporarily held back the encroaching void, but it was clear their resources were dwindling rapidly. In the tense hours that followed, Solaris proposed a daring plan. Valix found herself at the heart of it, her mind linked with Kira's to form the core of a unified psychic network. Augmented telepaths, Eldric's gifted colonists, and the most powerful Centaurian minds joined them, creating a vast psionic web. The Odyssey X, sheathed in distorted dark energy fields, led a small fleet of ships into the very maw of the cosmic horror. As they breached the periphery of the Terminus, Valix's expanded consciousness reeled. Reality fractured around them. Impossible geometries writhed in dimensions beyond comprehension. The void itself seemed to scream, assaulting their minds with soul-shattering force. Valix gritted her teeth, clinging to Kira's presence as an anchor. Through their combined will, they managed to imprint the entity's structure, catching glimpses of potential weaknesses before the overwhelming psychic assault forced them to retreat. As they snapped back to normal space, alarms blared throughout the ship. The Terminus, enraged by their intrusion, had accelerated its onslaught. On the interfaces, Valix watched in horror as entire star systems winked out of existence, consumed by the ravenous dark energy tendrils. "We don't have much time," Solaris's voice cut through the chaos. "Prepare for our final offensive." Valix met Kira's eyes, a silent understanding passing between them. They would be the linchpin of humanity's last, audacious attempt. As they took their positions, surrounded by a dizzying array of psionic amplifiers and quantum resonators, Valix felt the weight of countless lives resting on their shoulders. The ship lurched as they plunged once more into the nightmarish realm of the Terminus. Valix's mind expanded, merging with Kira's, becoming a focal point for the combined psychic energy of their allies. Together, they formed a spear of pure thought and will, aimed at the heart of the cosmic monstrosity. Reality itself seemed to splinter as they struck. Valix felt her consciousness stretched to its limits, teetering on the edge of oblivion. Through the maelstrom of cosmic forces, she sensed the Terminus recoil, its unfathomable presence flickering for just a moment. Then everything went white.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.